Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Philip, and if there's one thing life has taught me the hard way, it's this. It doesn't matter how much you do, you can never keep a partner that doesn't wish to be kept. You can love them. You can support them. You can give them the world. But if their eyes are outside, no amount of effort will hold them in place. I learned that truth in the most brutal, soul-crushing way possible when I watched my wife and her lover walking into the beach house I paid for with my own money. But I had a surprise for them. Here's the thing. Before it all went to hell, life was actually good. So, before I take you into how it all unraveled, I want to walk you through everything from the beginning. Buckle up, this one's going to be a ride. Audrey and I were friends long before we were ever anything more. We'd both been through our fair share of failed relationships. She had her baggage, and I had mine. But when those relationships didn't work out, we both found ourselves single again. Not knowing what to do, we decided to try dating ourselves. So, we gave it a shot. And surprisingly, it worked. I say surprisingly, because neither of us had a perfect track record in love. But something about being together felt easy, like we already knew the worst and best of each other. Within a year of dating, we got married. And let me tell you, it felt like the right move. At that time, I was fully invested in my business. I run a company that imports wares from China, which means I travel now and then. Sometimes it's just a trip to another state. Other times, it's overseas. Audrey never complained about my travel schedule. Not once. She understood the nature of my work, and at least from what I saw back then, she was supportive. Before we got married, Audrey had her own thing going on. She worked in the corporate sector and was good at what she did. But after we tied the knot, I offered her a position in my company. I thought it would be a good way for us to spend more time together, build something as a team. She took over the marketing side of things, which gave her a clear lane of responsibility. Meanwhile, I continued handling the bigger picture. Overall strategy, operations, and expansion. It was a system that worked well for us. Our business started growing, our finances got better, and life became comfortable. It genuinely felt like we were building a life that's solid, steady, something to be proud of. And that's why, looking back, it still stuns me. If someone had told me back then that Audrey would cheat on me, I would have laughed in their face. I would have argued with them until I ran out of breath. Because the version of her I knew, she wasn't capable of that. At least, that's what I believed. One night, Audrey, my wife, had dozed off on the couch. She was curled up, her phone still lit in her hand. Just another quiet evening after a long day. I reached over to take her phone, just to place it on the side table like I always did when she forgot. But the moment I tapped the screen to lock it, I noticed a message thread still open. It wasn't the message itself that caught my attention at first. It was the name. It was saved under a name that clearly read as female, complete with the emoji to throw you off. But the message sitting there wasn't from any woman. The tone was wrong. You don't need to be a detective to tell when something feels off. The words were playful and laced with a kind of flirtation that men use. I think every married person prays they never find themselves in the moment I found myself that night. So I started scrolling, and the further I scrolled, the colder I felt. Message after message, date after date, lie after lie. My wife had been sneaking around behind my back. I copied the number immediately. I needed to know who the hell this person really was. I ran the number through a caller ID app one use occasionally for work. It pulled up a name that made everything inside me break. It was her assistant. The same guy I paid salaries to. The man whom I had attended his wedding and met with his new wife, Claudia, just last year. That's who she'd been sneaking around with while lying to my face. I kept scrolling. I needed to know how long this had been going on. And that's when I saw messages from way back. Some even before his assistant's wedding to his wife, Claudia. And here's the part that shocked me. In one of the older messages, Audrey actually told him, "I hate that she gets to have you all to herself. I wish it were me." My wife was jealous of his assistant's wife, Claudia. A woman who had done nothing wrong, except love the same man Audrey was betraying me with. I can't even begin to explain how that felt. After the shock of what I saw in my wife's phone began to settle, I started doing what any man in my position would have done. I took screenshots of everything I could capture. I wasn't thinking straight, but I knew I had to protect myself. I had to collect the truth before it disappeared. These weren't just flirty texts either. They were detailed conversations. Conversations about when they would meet, where, and how to cover it up. My wife didn't just cheat. She organized it like a second life. As I kept scrolling through the chat, I learned they had a whole routine worked out. Whenever I traveled, especially during the time I was flying in and out of China for that big import deal, they'd use those windows to sneak away. And the place they always went? The beachfront property I bought for my wife was an anniversary gift. I got it for her because she once told me that the ocean made her feel calm, that it was the only place where her thoughts weren't racing. And now that same house I gave out of love was their little hideaway. Now I had a choice to make. Two paths lay out in front of me. I could wake her up and confront her with these messages and demand answers right there. Or I could be smart about it. Catch them in the act. I leaned toward the second option, but I knew if I was going to do this, I might as well invite someone. That's when I thought about Claudia, my wife's assistant's wife. If anyone deserved the truth as much as I did, it was her. And something in me said if I'm going to expose this affair, then I want the people who were hurt the most to be the ones standing in that room when the truth crashes down on them. So I made up my mind. I was going to set a trap. I put her phone back down without waking her. But sleep? That didn't come for me that night. All I could think about was how many times I'd been a fool in my own house. That was the beginning of the end. I just didn't know yet how far I'd go to bring it all into the light. But one thing was already clear. This wasn't going to end quietly. A day or two after my discovery, I went to see Claudia, the assistant's wife. I had made sure to time my visit carefully. Her husband, my wife's assistant, was still at work. Claudia already knew me well enough. So when I rang her doorbell, she was surprised to see me, but she welcomed me in without hesitation. She probably thought I was just dropping by for something casual. But I sat her down on her couch, looked her in the eye, and said, I need to show you something, and I'm really sorry in advance. I opened my phone, pulled up the folder of screenshots I had taken, every flirty message, every suggestive photo, every lie wrapped in emojis and pet names, and I handed over. At first, she just stared at the screen, silent, like her brain was struggling to connect the dots. Then she started swiping, one message after another. Her hands trembled, and I could see her lips tighten as she scrolled through the evidence of her husband's betrayal. She whispered something under her breath, but I didn't press. I let her take it in. Eventually, she asked, "Is this real?" I told her it was, and if she needed more proof, I suggested she check his phone. "I'm not telling you to snoop," I said, "but if you have access, take a look. You deserve to know the truth for yourself." Before I left, I asked her for one thing, discretion. "Claudia, please don't let him know you've seen any of this yet. And don't tell Audrey either. My wife doesn't know I've discovered this. I need it to stay that way, at least for now." She nodded slowly, eyes still glassy, like her world had tilted off its axis. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. It was Claudia. She confirmed everything. She'd gone through her husband's phone, texts, pictures, and call logs. It was worse than she thought. The affair had been going on even before they got married. "He was lying to me while we were planning our wedding," she said, voice breaking. "And I had no idea." She then asked, "What do we do now?" I didn't hesitate as I met her eyes and said, "I have a plan." Now, I'd like to say that I handled everything calmly and without emotion, but that would be a lie. The truth is, once I discovered what Audrey had been doing behind my back, I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. Still, instead of reacting right away, I decided to take my time and do things smart. I wanted evidence, and I knew exactly where to look, the beach house. I got the property for Audrey a few years ago. I rarely went there myself, and I wasn't even sure if the security cameras I had paid to be installed back then still worked. So I hired a trusted technician to go out there and quietly inspect the whole system for me. A few days later, he called me with an update. Some of the cameras were dead, but a few still worked. Enough to show me more than I ever wanted to see. He transferred the footage to a secure drive and gave it to me personally. I watched it, and let me tell you, there's no pain quite like seeing the person you gave your life to, locked in someone else's arms, in a house you paid for, in spaces you designed for her comfort. I saw Audrey and her assistant making out in the kitchen, then in the bathroom, then in the living room. It wasn't a one-time thing. I felt sick. I sent a few of the clips to Claudia. She deserved to see it. I didn't dump everything on her, just enough to confirm her worst fears were real. She was shaken, of course. But instead of exploding, she responded with a quiet kind of resolve. We agreed we were going to wait for the next time they tried to sneak away. Weeks passed. I played the role of the clueless, hardworking husband. I was already traveling a lot for business at the time, working on expanding our supply chain with partners in China. So when I told Audrey that I had a week-long trip coming up, she didn't even blink. I booked a real flight, packed my bags, and even had one of my employees drop me off at the airport. She kissed me goodbye and told me to be safe. But I never boarded that plane. Instead, I grabbed a cab, circled back to a quiet hotel not far from the beach house, and checked in. I turned off my main phone and kept only a burner and my tablet. Through the Find My app, I could track Audrey's phone, since we had it connected for safety reasons. Day 1, nothing. She went to work, came home, and didn't even flinch. Day 2, I called the office mid-morning, just checking in casually, pretending to be a husband who misses his wife. I asked my assistant if Audrey was in. He said yes, but mentioned she was getting ready to leave for the rest of the day, said something about a meeting. When I asked what the meeting was about, he said she didn't give any details, just said it was important. I told him to alert me the moment she left the building. I immediately called Claudia, told her it was happening today, gave her the exact address and directions to the beach house. I expected her to need a little time, but she said she was already dressed and on her way. I guess part of her was hoping this moment would come. Around 1:30 p.m., I got the call. She was gone, and she wasn't alone. She left with her assistant. I was already with Claudia. I used my spare keys to unlock the door, and we let ourselves in. We already poured wine, sat down in the living room, and turned on the camera feeds. While we waited, something clicked in me. I realized why Audrey always picked this place. It made perfect sense. It was far, about 2.5 hours away from our home in Florida. It was quiet, private, and I never monitored it. At our main house, she knew I kept an eye on the cameras. But here, no surveillance, no suspicion, no neighbors, just the ocean and silence. No one would ever guess she was cheating here. Claudia and I didn't say much. We just sipped our wine and watched the feed like it was a reality show we didn't want to be part of. Then we saw them, Audrey and her assistant pulling up to the house. They had no idea who was already sitting inside, waiting. The second they stepped inside, I calmly stood up and said, "Welcome." They froze. My wife's smile dropped instantly, and so did her lover's. His name's Damien. Claudia didn't waste time. She stood up, walked straight up to her husband, and without hesitation, slapped him across the face. Then she let him have it, cursing him out for cheating on her, for lying, for making her believe in a marriage that was a joke from the start. Damien looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. Audrey, on the other hand, looked like she was searching for the right lie to tell, fumbling with her words, trying to explain something that could soften the blow. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked, "Is this the meeting you took the day off for?" She said nothing, not a single word. I stepped closer to look her in the eye. "Did you really think I would never find out you've been cheating for over a year?" I asked. That's when the tears came. She broke down right in front of me, sobbing. She started to beg, saying she had made a mistake, that she was sorry. I told her calmly that it was too late for apologies. I had already seen everything. The texts, the late-night messages, the pet names, the plans they made behind my back. I had screenshots, dates, every detail she never thought I'd discover. And now, I have video footage too. From the beach house cameras. I saw them all over the place. In the kitchen, the living room, the hallway. I didn't go into graphic detail, but I made it clear. I had the proof. Then I laid out the terms. We were getting a divorce. That wasn't up for discussion. She would resign from her role at the company immediately. I told her she'd get a severance package to help her move on, and that would be the end of it. But I also warned her that if she tried to take this to court, if she tried to drag this out or come after more than what's fair, she would lose. Completely. Because years ago, during a rough patch when I was facing lawsuits, I had legally restructured my assets. Most of what I own isn't even in my name anymore. My wealth is locked down. And if she pushed, I would release every single piece of evidence, texts, photos, and those clips. Audrey collapsed into more begging, asking me to forgive her, that she didn't mean to hurt me. But I had nothing left to give. I was done. Then I turned to Claudia. I asked her what she planned to do. She didn't hesitate, said she was divorcing Damien, and planned to take everything she could. I nodded and told her I'd cover her legal fees. I'd get her the best attorneys in the state. She deserved that much. Audrey and Damien were still pleading as Claudia and I walked out. You know, when you go through something like this, people expect you to fall apart. And maybe for a little while, I did, just in ways no one could see. This is just one of those moments in life that test you. A small challenge in the grand scheme of things, sure, but one that hits deep. I've always known that betrayal is a part of life. That's just how the world works. But never in a million years did I think it would come from the one person I handed my heart to with no backup plan. I never thought she would be the one. Audrey wasn't just my wife. She was someone I brought into my world. I shared everything with her. I gave her access not just to my home, but to my business, my trust, my name. That's not something I handed out lightly. But I did for her. Because I believed in her. And she threw that away for someone who couldn't even be honest with his own wife. That's what makes it so painful. It hurts to know she could stoop so low. That she could pretend for over a year, come home, look me in the eye, act like nothing's going on, while sneaking around with a man we both knew. A man I trusted enough to allow around her, around my business. That's the part that'll sit with me for a long time. That level of dishonesty, that level of selfishness, changes how you see a person forever. But I'll tell you this, she did what she did. And she will face the consequences of those actions. I'm not sparing her the punishment, not because I'm bitter, but because actions have outcomes. I'm moving on. What she lost is far greater than what I lost. Because I lost a liar, but she lost someone who would have gone to the ends of the earth for her. Someone who truly believed in building a life together. And that, my friends, is something you don't get back. So yeah, this was a challenge. But it's one I'm walking away from stronger, sharper, and a whole lot wiser. Betrayal doesn't break me. It just shows me where to cut the rope.